Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range. So this is for Clementine and Otis. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks.
Yeah, good to be here, man. Whoa. Bit on pearl.
Submissive donut lifestyle.
3, 2, 1. All right, let's do this. Today's guest is Walker Ryan. Walker is a professional skateboarder, author, and co-host of the Old Friends Catch Up podcast, a show in which Walker and friend Dr. Kyle Brown discuss injuries, health, and of course skateboarding. It just makes so much sense. Today, Walker is with me for this 100th episode of Terrible Happy Talks, live from his home in Venice, California, to share his journey, experiences, challenges, and hopes for the future. Walker Ryan, welcome.
What's up? Thanks
Dude,
for having me. Number 100, that's pretty epic. Triple digits. Congrats.
Thanks, man. Thanks a lot. It's funny, as I read that, I went, oh, shit, I didn't check that you actually live in Venice, California.
Yeah, and that is incorrect. I'm in Napa, which is Northern California. But that's okay. Like a couple years ago, I was living in Venice. But last year, my wife and I moved to New York. So it would have been super difficult for you to track down where I live just using the internet because it's like we live in New York, but we're subletting that. And we spent time in Massachusetts, where she's from, and now we're just at my mom's house in Northern California. So we're like all over the map. We're just like trying to continue nomading it as best we can during the COVID year.
Thanks for being so polite and not like just interrupting me, because yeah. I did stalk you a bit online. I mean, I've been watching your skateboarding probably, on and off for the last 10 years, but then I was like, I wonder where the guy's, like, where does he live? And then I found it on your website. I was like, oh, he lives in Venice.
Yeah, so that's on my bad. I should have updated my website a little bit better. I've always had a hard time committing to living somewhere. So after I'd lived in Venice for like 2 years, I'm like, damn, this is a big deal. Like, I actually live in Venice, because I had convinced my wife to try it for a year. And, I was like, and I didn't really want to live in LA for too long. I was like, let's just do a year. But it was easy and hard to leave, because it was just such a chill pace of life. But yeah, we switched things up, but we're still trying to figure out where we want to live. Australia is definitely on our list.
Yeah, man. Please come. You're welcome here. Come anytime. Come soon. Actually, as soon as our borders open, wow. We're still locked down here. So yeah, man, you've got a lot going on, dude. And like, I'm just curious, like, what's a day in the life like for you right now? I mean, you're obviously a professional skateboarder. You're an author. You've written your book, and you've also got a podcast. So, like, what does a day in the life of Walker Ryan look like at the moment?
Right. So at the moment, I'll start my day with like some reading a book that I'm enjoying, and then like do a little writing, because I have like another book I'm working on, or something else. So it's like I try to dedicate the first hour or two of my day to something like that. I find it just to be the most easy to get into writing, particularly like just the distractions aren't there yet of like all the things I've told myself I have to do for the day. And so after that, I'll get online and just, tackle emails and make myself like an impossible to-do list of all the things I need to do on the internet, which, so the podcast is one part of what I do, but it's all through a brand called Old Friends, where we sell shirts and merch and fitness gear. So like foam rollers and resistance bands and all this, like stuff you'd use for physical therapy, essentially. And so that's one side of it. But then we also do this thing on Patreon. It's called Old Friends Fitness. And it's a video podcast series beyond just what we do for free with the catch up. So there's always something I got to edit. Generally, it's like Instagram assets, which I just hate making, or I don't hate making them, but it's like sort of tedious. Like, oh, how am I gonna cover this subject in 50 seconds? So like it's an enticing little edit for people to watch, because what we do is every month we pick Dr. Kyle Brown is a physical therapist I grew up here in Northern California with, great skateboarder. And he's long wanted to make a project that basically conveys like the clear breakdown of what you should do when rehabbing at home from certain injuries, like common ones for skateboarders. So this is a collaborative project where we put together a video that breaks down those exercises. And then we have a follow-up podcast that like explains the research. And then we offer like a PDF, and it's basically like this whole package. So every week I'm putting out content for that and just trying to budget my time. So I'm making sure I'm on schedule, editing the little things that come out. And yeah, so to answer your question, like the first few hours after I do a little writing, I'm like trying to do whatever I've set aside for that. Then if I can, go to the skate park and, work on a trick or just get a little cruise and, try to get out in the streets at least like twice a week. So in Northern California, that means driving like an hour to San Francisco or the Bay Area, meeting with a filmer and just, trying to get a trick, either seeing what the day brings, meaning like just meet up with a crew and just play it by ear, or I got this spot I've been thinking about for the last 15 years or 10 years or 5 years, whatever. And like, I want to go. And so I'll sort of make that arrangement. So that's pretty much my routine. So it's a lot of kind of tedious audio video editing work, emails, and like, I'd call it, customer service because there's always, something going on. And then, skating.
Yeah. How much, just because I'm so stoked to talk to you about skating, but how much pressure do you feel from your sponsors to produce footage on a consistent basis?
At the moment, my sponsors don't really put the pressure on. It's just me. Like, I have this desire to put out like at least one video part every year. So in my head, I'm like always, and on paper, I'm always like keeping a list of like how many tricks I've filmed for like what project I want to put out next. And so it's really an internalized pressure that's kind of ridiculous. On top of it though, there's a pressure of like, I should make an Instagram edit that's fun, or like I should make a park edit that's fun, like little things to keep producing for, the Instagram element which is like its own weird pressure vortex. But really like the sponsors, it's not from the sponsors. I mean, my main sponsor, Sovereign, they are working on a video, but it's very low pressure. We don't have a deadline. We don't have it'll come together when it comes together, in a sense. They focus more on like trip videos. So it's like, last one was they came up here to the Bay Area and we, 10 days filmed like a little 5-minute edit. So that's kind of how those videos for the sponsors go. So it's just this internalized thing where I just like I want to make sure, my next part is, stands out from my last one or has harder tricks or whatever. So it's just kind of a vicious, like, I don't know, not a vicious cycle, but I'm just always like putting this pressure on myself, and I don't really need to. Sometimes I wonder how healthy it is, because it's often like, all right, I'm 33 now, or going to be 33 this year, 32 right now. How can I top like the 20-year-old in me, but I still want to, and I'm like set on it. So it's just,
Do you think, is it maybe because like, you just don't feel done yet? You haven't, how does your body feel? Does your body feel still good? Like still feel good?
Yeah. Body's surprisingly pretty good. I'm not the craziest fitness guy, or like I should say like other than skating, like exercising and maybe just like strengthening, or I don't go to the gym, or I don't do a lot of things that I probably should at this point in my life to really maintain some like better strength. But it's ironic because that's basically what I'm editing videos about and talking about with Kyle all week long. It's like, you know, all right, if you're coming back from patellofemoral pain, like do these leg squats, you know, every day, regardless of if the pain's still there, just because it's going to be better for your skating and for your like general health as an athlete. So I'm a little like, I'm a hypocrite there. Not a hypocrite, but I'm just like, I'm not as active as I want to be. But despite that, I somehow am able to like, you know, if I'm skating enough, I feel like I can still jump down some big shit. Like 2 weekends ago, I surprised myself by like jumping down a 13 stair for like an hour, which I was like, and I got the trick, and it was like, all right, felt good. I felt all right the next day. So it's sort of like, I wonder like how that works.
What was the trick? What was the trick?
It was just a switchback. So I flipped down a big set up here in Northern California. It's a set that I've like thought about skating for, you know, since I was in high school. So it was cool to like check one off.
Dude, that's
but things like that, you know.
Just the switchback, so I flipped down a 13 stair. I love that. That's so fun. Yeah. With the old friends stuff, what originally inspired it? I mean, was it a response to being an injured skateboarder?
Yeah. So when it came to the like producing fitness goods, it was like we started this brand making hats and shirts and kind of like random accessories that we just thought would be fun to make. Like, oh, our friend makes leather wallets. Like, let's do a little collab wallet pack. Oh, my friend makes these skateboards out of wine barrels. Like, let's do like a little release there. So it was sort of always open-ended. Like, let's just make stuff we want to. And I, you know, always travel with a foam roller. When I came back from a knee injury, I used like a ton of resistance bands work. And I just liked that style of you know, like strength workouts. And there's just no one skating made that stuff. So it's like, why not just try this? So we just made these things called the PT pack, where it's a foam roller that came with a jump rope and 4 resistance loop bands. And it was just like, let's see if anyone digs it. And people went crazy for it. It like sold out pretty quick, and we got some more orders. So we just kind of like tested it, and there was a response. So like, all right, let's keep doing it. And this was all with my friend Kyle, who's a PT. So it felt like we can do this because he's sort of giving the seal of approval, you know, like this is what you use for rehab and strengthening and stretching and whatever. And so from that point, we were like, we got to complement this with like video content and educational information, because everything up until this year has just been Kyle making Instagram videos. And his videos are a little bit like, he puts some skating in there. He doesn't have any voiceover. It's just like a song he likes, a little like, he writes a comment that kind of breaks down like, all right, if you're coming back from an ankle sprain, like this study shows this study shows this, like these are the things you should do. But it was a little like DIY kind of budget, and we wanted to just like up the scale a little bit and make it a little more complete feeling. So it's like, all right, this 15-minute video will like actually break down what he does in his clinic, what his approach is when he's treating skaters, and, you know, just make it thorough. So that's the evolution there. It was like making stuff, doing little videos on Instagram with Kyle, but then like, let's make this like a real thing that people would like, a premium version where you pay for it, you know?
Dude, it's rad. I love it. And it sort of leads me to like something I was just thinking about. I mean, making a sustainable living and career from skateboarding must be one of the hardest things in the world to do. Let's face it. Do you also like, and listening to you talk about it, you know, I can see your entrepreneurial spirit. Do you feel like it was also a response to, well, you know, how am I going to sustain some type of living outside of skateboarding one day? Was that in your mind?
Yeah. I mean, 100% with starting the brand. I mean, I don't make very much money from skateboarding and my sponsors anymore. That's like, it's a little bit, but it's almost more supplemental at this point. So I have to kind of hustle all sorts of ways to like support myself. And that's been the case for the last few years. Basically, when I lost my shoe sponsor, DVS, they kind of just cut their program and the whole team was sort of let go. I was like, all right, this is kind of it. Like, I'd already started Old Friends, but it was in the back of my mind, like, this is what I want to do so that I can stay involved in skating. Hopefully, like, grow it so it can, like, you know, provide a living someday, but like also have it be a creative outlet. So it was all sorts of things, but definitely I've always known or just living not living in, but working in the quote unquote working in the skateboarding industry for the last 15 years. That's how I've seen most skaters and peers like make it work. Like, your sponsors aren't going to keep paying you forever unless you get really lucky. It's all about like creating these little businesses. So I've just sort of seen that, always wanted to do it, and just tried to find a way that was a little more interesting to me than just like making product, you know? So that's like been the goal. And then
and a little bit more unique as opposed to starting a board company or a clothing brand.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with it. And especially with like clothing, like if, you know, like it's cool if that's kind of like your passion or fashion in a sense, but like, you know, that doesn't grab me or inspire me too much. Like, I love to wear simple gear and clothing, but I don't consider myself like this like fashion guy. So like that's not really where I wanted to go with it. Boards I love, but I feel like it's a very saturated market at this point. Everyone's starting board companies. And what I hope we can achieve is something that, like, you know, helps people and educates in a sense. Like, that's like the main goal with our videos. It's like videos and podcasts. It's like, all right, this isn't going to like diagnose or heal you, but you can get a little bit more information about a very common injury you might be going through it from a skater's perspective, because Kyle's a skater and I'm like the guy that like doesn't know anything and just wants to learn about it. So that's
but also maybe a little bit on the front line as well, in terms of putting your body, you know, to the test. I mean, if you're still throwing yourself down, you know, like you said, 13 stairs, you know, that's putting a lot of strain on you. So it seems like a really good marriage between you two, you know?
Yeah, it's fun. And he really is one of my best friends. Like, is he? I'm from St. Helena, which is a small town in Napa. He's from Calistoga, which is 10 minutes north, the other town. And we were like the two, you know, quote unquote best skaters in our generation. And at first we were kind of like, I viewed him as an enemy, like, oh, Kyle, he's older than me. And it was like, oh, he's so good. Like, he beat me in that last contest. But then we became friends and started making videos together when I was like 14 and he was in college here in town. And, you know, he took me on my first trip to Thailand when I was like 17. And it was really through him, in going back to Thailand after I graduated from college, through him, I met this guy, Patrick Wallner, who was filming a video with Kyle at the time. And through Patrick, I got to travel all around the world extensively. And so like Kyle's like, not only is this a fun thing to do together, but like he's been a part of my, life as a skateboarder forever. So it's cool. It's very organic in that way.
Yeah. And you can hear it in your podcast. The conversation between you is relaxed and easy. It doesn't feel like, I guess, too contrived.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, there's your compliment for the day.
Yeah,
you know,
appreciate that.
I do want to talk a little bit more about skateboarding, because I am curious. And when you started out, did you have obviously you realized you loved it. There's a passion there, like so many skateboarders. At what point did you say to yourself, I want to take it to the next level? Was there a point?
I feel like it's just a product of being obsessed. So it's like I was obsessed at a very early age with skateboarding, where like it suddenly, you know, by 8, probably earlier, I got my first board at 7, but like it was, other sports weren't interesting to me. That was it. And I guess I don't consider myself the most competitive person, but skateboarding brought out a competitiveness in me to just like be as good as I possibly could be. And, you know, that the evolution from there is obviously like, well, like, look at these pros. Like, I want to be as good as them, you know, like I want to do the tricks they're doing in the videos. So, and knowing, like with skateboarding, and I'm sure surfing or so many other sports, like you accomplish one hurdle that like at a point you thought was impossible. Like for me, it was like hopping up a curb, you know, like that's impossible. And then you do it and you realize, whoa, like any if I can do that, anything else is possible. And suddenly the videos you're watching and studying, you realize like there's this like clear line of like, all right, I can kickflip this 3 stair. Like if I get good enough, I could kickflip that 15 stair. So it's I don't know. It's probably just that. Like I don't think there was a single point where I realized like I want to try to get sponsored or something. It was like, I mean, I've been going through storage this week, and I found a sponsor me tape that I sent to Spitfire when I was 10. And I was terrible. Like I was like frontside flipping off curbs and like not even good for in my opinion, not even good for like a 10-year-old, like pretty whatever. Like, but I thought I should like try, you know? So I don't know where that desire started. So
yeah, interesting. I've always been curious because I mean, I know some skateboarders. I think all skateboarders start out like, I want to be sponsored one day. I want to be sponsored one day. I mean, I know I did, but I do think we get to a point where you're like, you know what, maybe I don't have it. I don't really have it. And as a reality check. And I was wondering if you had any moments where it's like, you're like, hey, I'm actually maybe a little bit better than most of my friends. And, you know, and people are interested in me and people are watching. I just thought you might have had that moment. Like, were you eventually approached by someone to sponsor you? Like, or did you keep chasing that?
I was, like I said, I was trying. So, you know, I would send a VHS tape to Spitfire. I would bring a VHS tape to my local shop and not get responses. So I don't know what it was about my stubbornness to like keep trying, but eventually this shop in San Rafael, which is like an hour away, liked the sponsor me tape and we're like, yeah, you should ride for our little team. And then later at a demo they threw, actually, I met this guy, Ron Allen, who he's a,
Ron Allen.
Ron Allen? Yeah.
Ron Allen. Skate for New Deal back in the day, I think. Was he a New Deal skater?
I mean, he was a
time ago.
Ton of companies. I mean, he's H Street. He's in his like
original H Street.
He is OG, and he started a couple companies. Fun. The one I rode for was Energy. So he approached me and asked me if I wanted to get free boards from his little company, and I was like, hell yeah! And that's when it really felt like, damn, like this is cool, because that was someone coming up to me, not like me asking or, you know, like, sponsor me, look at me, look at my video. Like that was an organic like interaction. Demo, damn, that's cool, you're pretty good, like, wants free board. So that was like 14 when that happened. So I guess if there was like a moment, it was probably then, when it's like, damn, like a pro skater who owns a company like is interested, like maybe this could work.
Yeah. So you grew up in Northern California?
Yeah.
And how would you describe your childhood in that area?
So it's a super small town. It's like 5,000 people. And it was a fun childhood. I mean, it's like a town. We live in this little town. It's surrounded by vineyards. So there's a lot of like, and, you know, hillsides around. So we're close to a lot of beautiful nature. And, you know, but for me, I just wanted to skate. Once I got a skateboard, I just wanted to skate. And I had a slightly unique childhood in that my father, he was a winemaker, and he, from the time I believe I was 2 or 3 years old, he got involved in a joint venture winery in Georgia, the ex-Soviet Republic of Georgia. And so he was there half the time. And so we would spend time there as well. So we were kind of going back and forth, you know, between this quaint little Napa Valley town and like Tbilisi, this like borderline war-torn feeling town. I mean, it wasn't war-torn, but like the Soviet Union, you know, it was a depressed place, dark and power outages and like, you know, kind of gnarly, like, and so, you know, my dad had envisioned that we would just start living there full time, and my sister and I would become little Georgian kids and, you know, speak Russian and Georgian and just adapt. But my mom just was not having it. It was just dangerous. Like bombs went off nearby. Like it was just like not the place. So there was like a little tension there, but eventually my dad came back and I think that was like 7 or 8 years old on, we were just here, and he worked for a winery in town. And so yeah, mom was a nurse. My dad he was a winemaker. And then, I was just skating the local schoolyards and stuff. And we had like a little wooden park, but it wasn't great. And, it's just kind of, I was like, until basically middle school, I didn't really have a crew to skate with. So it was kind of just like solo skating or forcing my friends to skate with me. And then, from middle school on, I always had some buddies, and, we'd make videos, and it was fun. I was a hardworking student. I was always like very focused in school, but then skating was like this,
Because that was actually one of my questions. Sorry, Walker. One of my questions is like, how would you describe yourself as a student? Were you quite diligent and focused?
Yeah, and probably competitive too. I always knew that I was, I want to say expected to go to college. Like, it was kind of not a question. I wouldn't say forced, but it's like, yeah, you're going to go to college. So like, knowing I wanted to go to college and should go to college, school was like, you just have to take it seriously. So it was like, I was a good student. I was always like trying to be in the, top of my class or whatever. And so, and I enjoyed it. I mean, like until math got real deep into calculus stuff, I was into math. And then, I always appreciated English, and, I don't know. I was just very like focused. Like, I got to get into the best college I can get into. And so, yeah.
So like, was it like an innate competitive spirit you've always had? Like, or what do you think drove that competitive nature? You think
I don't know.
I
think there's just like I'm sure it's internal. I'm sure it's a little, it has to do with my parents and just like their, like, I don't want to say expectations, but like, yeah, like you're like, do well, whatever you're doing, and, I don't know. I just, for me, I was hopeful that professional skating could happen, but I wasn't, by the end of high school, I didn't have sponsors paying me or like anything legit. So I was like, well, I'm going to go to college, so there was this hope, I think, all along that like, maybe I wouldn't have to go to college because like I would get sponsored and they'd want me to travel the world with them or whatever. But like, that didn't happen for me. So I went to college knowing like, all right, I got to just start taking life seriously and just see what's next. And with skating, I don't know if it's like this with surfing, but there's such a connection between like filming and storytelling. And so I was like, by the end of high school, I was like, well, I'll go to film school and I'll do that thing, because it was always just there anyway, since I was making videos. But when I got to college, I just went the, like general education route at first. Like, I didn't even really declare a major. And by the time I was a sophomore or junior expected to declare, I was kind of off the like film school track and just wanted to get, like, I found the sociology classes to be the most interesting. So I just was like, but also by that time I had started to get sponsored and started to get paid and was looking at college less like, hey, what is this school going to give me in terms of a job and a career, and more like, how can I finish and get my degree, but like make it an interesting experience so I can also skate and like pursue skating afterwards. Because by then it was like I was getting pulled in different directions by like, all right, college, and all right, people actually already like want to pay me to skate. So it was a little tricky.
Yeah, and that seems like the conundrum of many skateboarders who really go all in with it, especially when you are getting paid. It must be really hard to, well, I guess, maintain a focus on anything outside of skateboarding, because that dream is becoming realized, right?
Yeah.
It must have been a good feeling. It must have been an amazing feeling, dude.
It was cool. Yeah. I mean, I was ecstatic and hyped and, like a little guilty because I was like
Why?
in college and maybe not maximizing like what that university could offer. You know what I mean? Like, but I still took it seriously and, you know, graduated. But
with a sociology degree?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, man. That's so interesting because, I'm always curious to ask people about their education and their school journey, and you just sort of summed it right up from when you were a kid through high school. Yeah, I love it. It's interesting to me because it's amazing how developmental those years are. Especially, I find that first year out of high school, transitioning to college, because that's really when you're like, well, what's my direction and what am I going to do next? And I think a lot of young people fall into college without a clue as to why they're even there, but they're just there because it's like, well, I've got to do something. But I guess for you, you had your passion, and that was skateboarding, and it came into fruition, man. And not a lot of people can say that. Sorry to cut you off there, but I guess my question that I'm building up to slowly is like, you know, what would you say to someone that wants to go all in on skateboarding and they don't have anything else? They don't have anything else going on, but they put all their eggs in that one basket.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unwise to put all your eggs in the skateboarding basket. I mean, just from seeing so many skaters who I would at one point consider like, damn, you made it, how quickly it can just go away. And I've seen the struggle to like find your place in the world through like a lot of friends, and like, be it at 23 or at 43, you know, like it's a weird industry that I think is cool. And I'm like, I consider myself very fortunate and like so lucky to have had the experience I've had in this kind of like cowboy free-for-all Wild West sort of business world. But I don't really see, I think you should always have something else going on. And for me, it was, a college track, because I just, it's like you said, sort of what that 17, 18-year-old might just be on and not know anything different. I don't think that's for everybody. School isn't for everybody. It's not something that like, it's not something that works for everybody in their like late teenage years. It might happen later where you realize like, you know what, I want to pursue this career. I'm 25. I've had like life experiences. Now I'll dive into school and make it a little bit more, like a structured approach. So I don't know. I would just say like, it's so in high school skating, like for me personally, but I feel like most people, high school is a really demanding on your time. Like it's an all day thing, 5 days a week. College is actually like much easier to manage your time and have free time to do other things. Like you can block your schedule so your classes are only like 2 or 3 days a week. Like, so for people who are turned off of high school, I would say like consider college if it's not a stretch for you, either financially or, like if you can do it, I would say do it, because I think there's a lot to be gained, even if you are sort of lost and floundering. Like once you're there, like your exposure to so many subjects is just like yours for the taking. Like just you might stumble on something you never knew you were interested in, and I think that's like invaluable.
Like writing a book.
I mean, it's funny. Like that wasn't a college thing for me. I was like, so yeah, for me.
Sorry.
Anyway, so I would just say like for someone to answer your question though, like I just think you should always have like another something else going on, even if it's a job. Like skating is there, and like put yourself in a position to maximize it. I was very lucky in that I went to college in San Diego. It's like the epicenter of the skateboarding industry.
Yes.
But this day and age, you can be anywhere and like create videos and build a name for yourself and an excitement around your skating just with your little phones. So I don't think location is necessary anymore, but like
change that.
I don't know. It's a tough one. Like I just don't think like the win out of like pursuing skateboarding all in, like do it if it's in you and you just have to. But always have something else going on, because it's a
dude.
weird industry.
Yeah, it is, and it's so rad that you said that. But I think it's applicable to everything that you're doing, whether you're into skateboarding or whatever. I really believe that you should always be chasing like having a little side hustle or a side project. It's not only good, it's just good for inspiration and to keep you motivated, as opposed to just doing the one thing and grinding that out day in, day out. Even if you love that one thing, I find there's so much inspiration to be had by having multiple little projects going on, Yeah. But just going back to the whole college thing, because I often wonder like why I bothered going to university,
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, I mean, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be a school teacher or high school teacher without it.
Right.
And I reflect a lot on my university years, and I often hear people say, "Oh, I didn't really learn anything at university." But I must admit, the one thing that it really did help me with, like, it developed my writing skills, like, writing papers and essays. It actually has helped me. That aspect of it has really helped, improved and refined my ability to construct a paragraph or a sentence even sometimes.
Yeah.
So, and it makes a huge difference. That's one takeaway, And that's why, like, I really like how, I mean, I've heard you talk about this on different podcasts like the Nine Club and stuff, that you wrote a book, Top of Mason. I mean, can you tell us where the inspiration for that came from?
Yeah.
Rad.
Yeah, no, it was super. It's been so fun to put that out there in the world and get a response to it, because I was very nervous. But yeah, I'd been secretly working on this novel. It's all fiction, and I just wanted to write a story that captured a little bit of my experiences in the skateboarding industry. And it didn't, from my reading, it didn't exist. Like I've never read a book that's set in, there's books about skateboarders, but they're kind of targeted for a younger audience. It's more of like coming of age. It's like a kid who's into skating, or it's like a very peripheral thing. But I just thought, it's like skateboarding, at least in my world, is ripe with fascinating characters. And, I just started typing away at this little story. And after a couple of years, it was like, done. And I showed it to people, and there was really, I had really great feedback. I come from a family of novel enthusiasts and writers. So, I had right off the bat, like, people who have not only read books like crazy, but write them too, give me feedback. And it was very constructive. And some of my really close friends as well. So it was like, they were all just supportive. Like, there's something here. Like, you should fine tune it. So over the next few years, I did that, and then finally had it at a place where I was like, I want to just put this out and just see what people think. And like, I tried, the approach that, like, the literary world kind of, the track that you have to find, which is like, you find an agent and the agent sells a book to a publisher. But I just, like, I'm not a known writer. I haven't written or published short stories. Like, I just had this book, and I knew there was an audience for it because it's not really happening in skateboarding. So I tried it just to see, but I didn't get much of a response. It's another, like, world where I'm sure it's just so saturated with new writers, people writing. So I was like, I'm just going to do it myself, DIY, which has been really rewarding because, I don't know, I've still sold a bunch of books, and like, they've been good. They've been going right to skaters first. And sort of now it's going a little further out there to non-skaters. And actually the best feedback I get sometimes is from the people who aren't skateboarders, who, know about it, but they just, they get into the story, they get into the characters, and they walk away with a little bit more insight into, what I think is a very unique subculture. So
it is a unique subculture, but also, like, writing a book, you've created a legacy for yourself a little bit. Like, it'll never go away. It's always going to be.
Yeah. And I think that's the coolest thing about literature is, like, you create hopefully something timeless that, like, can always be appreciated. Video parts, it's like a video part, but I don't know. It's so much more, in my opinion. It feels the same kind of like thing. It feels like the same kind of product in a way, because it's like you spend so much time working on it. It's like your interpretation of the world in a sense, but with the book, like, you know, you're hopefully creating these characters that will live in people's.
You don't think a video part is timeless?
Yeah, I just think that like it's often tied so much to technology of the time, you know, like the video cameras, the trends that are happening at the time, like sponsors with the gear I'm wearing. I don't know. There's something a little bit less. Yeah, it's timeless, but like I don't know. I just feel like there's something.
Why is it
just different?
Why is a book more timeless? Because I agree, it feels like a book is more timeless. Do you think it's maybe because you're really like manifesting what's in your mind and you're like putting it out there in the world?
Yeah, and it's more of a complete snapshot in time, I'd say, which I think is important, and what I wanted to do with this book. It's like, all right, this, you know, it's set in the late 2000 teens, and, you know, it's a skateboarder's version of that world that like everyone can relate to. And so I just, they're just such different products. It's really hard to compare them, but I just feel like this is my first video part, you know, in a sense. And,
trying to recreate that.
Yeah. And I hope to just keep putting out more.
Trying to recreate that feeling. But
yeah.
Did you feel really vulnerable when you actually released that? Did you feel do you still feel that?
Yeah, totally. A little less just because what I was most nervous about in that, like, people wouldn't read it, or it's hard to read a full book. And like what I tripped out on is, and still tripping out on, is just people who hit me up who tell me they read it like in 3 days or like in 2 sittings, and like they are like so hyped on it. And like all the things that I was nervous about like seem to work for like the tension of the story and for the like, hey, I want to like keep reading this. And so I guess, and yeah, I'm like sharing a lot of myself. It's not a character. The protagonist isn't me. It's not about me, but there's a lot of me in there in a way that I've never shared before, like publicly, because that's essentially what it is. So there's that too. And like, you know, there's a lot of subjects that people might find surprising coming from me, like a lot of like heavy drug use, which I haven't done myself, but I've watched friends go through, and that I like, you know, people come up and question like, is that you? Like, were you on that trip for a while? Or like, were you this or were you that? Like, and that is, I wouldn't say vulnerable, but it's just a little funny. Like, oh, people maybe have a perception of me now based on what they read that, you know, that's fine, but it's out of my control at this point. So
we're so voyeuristic, us humans. Like, we want to know the dirt on people, you know. We want to.
Yeah. Totally.
It's so cool. Like, can you give us just a really? It's because it's completely fiction, correct? The whole book. Yeah, and can you just give us a real like brief summary of the storyline?
Yeah. So the main character is a 29-year-old San Francisco transplant, you know, moved to San Francisco to like make it in skating, but skating didn't work out. And the last thing he really had going for him was a relationship that also didn't work out. And he's found himself living in a SRO hotel, which is like a single room occupancy thing that's in San Francisco often. And he's also working in this hotel as a maid. And so that's the premise. And one thing leads to another, and he sort of ends up on a wild ride in the Tenderloin with a friend who also didn't make it in skateboarding, but took a much different, darker route. And so there's a set of characters, one being a friend who, you know, fell off skating completely, and another who's made it to the super heights of professional skateboarding and celebrity. So those two characters sort of guide the protagonist in this kind of wild adventure through San Francisco. So it's fun. It's like, it's meant to be just like a quick read, something you can like get into and just sort of like, trip out on. So
kind of hits a raw nerve. It hits a raw nerve for like straight away, like, even for me a little bit. I think for anyone that had the dream of making it in skateboarding.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I can see that it would hit raw nerves for people. But I just thought of a thing I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. What do you think it means to make it in skateboarding?
Yeah, I mean, it's so subjective. Like some people, it means getting one photo in a magazine. It means like getting a check for a period of time. Even if it's just like a check every once in a while over the course of years. For me, making it meant getting your name on the bottom of a skateboard, and that's where it's also very subjective, because that doesn't like mean much, especially now. You can get your name on the bottom of a skateboard, but still never make money from skating. So it's like it's a sense of pride and just personal like satisfaction. But making it really, in my opinion, means like you made it your career for a period of time, meaning like was financially supporting you. But it can mean all sorts of things, and that's what's so weird about the industry is like someone who made it can be unmade in like a matter of months, and then it's sort of like, well, what does this mean? I mean, you never lose your status as a pro who like was turned pro and your name was put on the bottom of a skateboard, but you can lose all the comforts, or the ego can all be shot down any second with professional skateboarding, quote unquote. I often like to put it in air quotes nowadays because it doesn't mean anything. I mean, like when I was coming up, there were clear gatekeepers, the magazines, and a few sets of brands that could turn you pro. These days, you could build a following of, 1 million people. It doesn't even have to be, it could be 100,000 on Instagram. You can produce your own skateboards and you can end up selling them direct to your fans. And you could be making more money than a lot of pros. So it's like, what's making it, what is it? What is professional skateboarding anymore?
Yeah, I mean, has professional skateboarding been diluted since the onset of social media and skateboarding?
I think so. And I think it creates a much faster churning of like names that get sponsored or get popular. And there's a whole there's many sets of ecosystems, essentially. There's like YouTube pros who target their audience is just little kids on YouTube who are learning and who they, grow up with for a decade now. Some of these people who, they have huge followings and make a lot of money from skateboarding, and they are skateboarders, but they've never had anything to do with the industry, being the magazines and the brands that like often dictate. So that's a whole world. And then there's just, kids who do it themselves with TikTok and Instagram. And that could be a whole nother ecosystem. So there's just like, it's wild. So it's disrupted it, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing either, because it just means there's more skaters out there. It's just there isn't one, industry dictating things anymore.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that. A friend and I were talking about it the other day. We were just kind of like, and you hear a lot of skateboarders talk about it in terms of, the onslaught of content that you can just look at on Instagram. I can look at Instagram right now or YouTube and clip after clip after clip. But back when you were younger, and probably when I was younger, would have to wait for a video or a company to release a video, and you'd wait all year to see this thing. Or even back when I was younger, it was like I'd wait all month for a 4-in-1 video magazine to come out and just be like frothing on that, like, and then Thrasher or Transworld once a month. So yeah, I think, but I agree with you. I don't think it's a bad thing anymore. I think it's great. I think it's just like it's giving people more, and skateboarders more freedom to express themselves and make their own luck and make, it's why not? Like let's encourage entrepreneurship, and that's what I think what I've been drawn to you. Like I've listened to both your episodes on the Nine Club, and I think, and I mean, even those guys when they were interviewing you were talking about, like, they're very interested in the fact that you have got this innate entrepreneurial spirit and the desire to create and produce things, I guess, linked to skateboarding, but not necessarily in the traditional fashion. And I think that's going to be like, and probably already is, super inspirational to a lot of young people, because it's like shifting the paradigm of what it means to be a skateboarder. And that's something I really respect about you, Walker. So just thought I'd say that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, man. So listen, dude, like, it's been epic. It's been almost an hour, and it's 6 a.m. here in Australia,
I know. Thank you for getting up early to do this. I can't imagine.
But dude, you said that in one of our emails, and I'm like, I've been getting up early for years. I love it. But I also, it's part of my routine. Like, I'll get up and I'll foam roll or stretch or
nice.
Actually I do a lot of deep breathing, oxygenating the body. And it's funny, I was thinking about it just before our interview, like, that is all in response to injuries I had from skateboarding. And that's actually, developing these morning routines and I guess a conscious approach to my body and how I can take care of it so I can keep doing what I love for as long as possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love it, Do you have a morning routine?
That's great. Not so much. I mean, I try to get a little, I was I was doing a bunch of resistance band stuff, like squats, like while I read for a little while, which was like a little extra multitasking. I'm really bad with multitasking, trying to like do as much at a time, which is, I don't think that healthy, but no, I'm not consistent with my routines, unfortunately. I need to get better. And that's been large part because this past year we've been moving around so much. But I need to get on a little bit of a better one. I respect what you're talking about. And I've been trying, like, we've been drifting, but my wife, we're in California, but she works New York hours. So she's sometimes on Zoom calls at like 6 a.m. So like I try to get on a program where I'm just getting up with her and getting a really early start to my day as well. But it's Monday and we had a kind of a fun weekend. So it's a lag. It's like not that harsh adjustment. So like, I feel you on the early morning stuff. I just didn't realize it was because you were like had already had to be at work, but it makes sense. So.
Yeah, doing it before work. Did you have a fun weekend in wine country?
Yeah.
Lots of wine?
Yeah.
Lots of wine?
Yeah, a lot of wine. It was my friend's birthday, so we were able to do a little COVID-safe get together. There's a lot of vaccines happening now in California, which is good. And you guys are you in... It was Melbourne that was like completely rid of the coronavirus. Is the rest of the country on that track too? Yeah.
The country's tracking well overall. Melbourne, which is the state of Victoria, they were in like the heaviest lockdowns of the whole country. They were having difficulty containing it. But I mean, if I'm honest, I've actually kind of switched off from following it. But I know that restrictions have been reduced, and there's a lot more. There's a lot more freedom to travel interstate, and also going out in public. The laws have relaxed a lot, which is making everyone feel a lot more optimistic, I think. But we're going into winter, and I guess it's the second COVID winter. So I guess there's a little bit of speculation about how's that going to look. But what's the vibe like over there?
I mean, it's, everyone's masked. There's still like a lot of cases. I mean, it varies state to state, but at least in California, I'm seeing a lot of people being optimistic because of the vaccines and just how many people, how widely they're offering it now. I mean, I think we're projected to like have everyone who wants one be able to get one by May. So that's like a big deal here.
Can I ask, How do you feel about that? Will you be getting vaccinated?
Yeah, I'll definitely get a vaccination. I mean, my mom is a nurse, so she got one pretty early on. A lot of other people I know have had them, and while it's obviously nerve-wracking because it's there aren't like long years of trials, I do trust the science, and I believe that there's, I mean, from my understanding, this is a vaccine that's been, strains of this type of SARS virus have been they just haven't been funded. So it's not like it's totally out of thin air. Everything was just kicked into high gear, and I don't know. I'm going to do it. I have asthma and stuff like that. So I am nervous about actually catching COVID.
Yeah, fair enough. Look, I'm really stoked to talk to Walker, and I'm just so grateful. And I ask all guests to come with a cause like that they want to support or advocate for. We sort of talked about it at the start, and the reason I do it, just to give it some context, is because I just want to give like people opportunities to give or be of service, and I think sometimes we get lost for an idea to do that. We don't know how we can help. So, is there anything you want to support or advocate?
Well, I mean, being here in Northern California, and I mean, just the United States, I'd say in general, like my family and my wife, we like Sierra Club has always been an organization that is very important to us, just for its work to fight climate change and, help secure land that can be preserved and not developed. And so Sierra Club is a big one. And then, our country has a lot of work to do with criminal justice reform. And I would say Grassroots Law Project is one that I think is doing great work in providing access to people who might need legal counsel and help, but also fight for certain reforms that I think are needed in this country. And so, I would say those two, Sierra Club and
Grassroots Law Project. Cool, man. No worries. I've just written them down, and you can find links to these organizations in Walker's show notes. And you can also listen to this podcast on a variety of different platforms other than the one you're listening to right now. You can find it on terriblehappytalks.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, I guess all the platforms. Now, listen, Walker, I've got a gift for you as well.
No way.
Our friends at IndoSoul, who actually their head office is in San Francisco. So they'll be sending you a pair of flip-flops or slides made from repurposed motor vehicle tires.
Hell yeah. I need flip-flops so bad right now, actually. Like, that's a perfect thing. I've been like, how do I buy flip-flops? I don't know where to go.
Well, they'll be it's going into summer, so it's perfect, so for your area of the world. It's going into winter here, so they're not as necessary. Although Australians are weird, man. Like, we call them thongs, and we pretty much will wear thongs like all through winter as much as we can, even when it's freezing. It's so weird.
Hey, respect. I need to get my feet that tan so I won't be shamed to do it.
do you tan well?
I mean, I'm a ginger, so I burn first, but I will go tan eventually. Yeah, I mean, you can turn brown, but I still got the ginger traits of, a fast sunburn. So my white ass feet are going to catch a burn, but then hopefully get a little less embarrassing to have in public.
Like those guys, IndoSoul will send you a pair of flip-flops or slides, and a big shout out to them. And if you go to their website, indosoul.com, and use code THT, you'll get a discount. But they're a great company advocating for sustainability and, taking tires out of landfill that would usually get burnt and, pollute the air. And also the storage of them can breed diseases such as malaria in some countries. So, yeah, man, I'm stoked on those guys. Yeah.
Can't wait.
So, brother, it's been a pleasure. Cool. Is there anything you want to end on? Like any like words of wisdom you want to impart on the world? I don't know
about words of wisdom. I mean, be good to each other. pursue what you love. I mean, I've found great joy in pursuing various different interests, and I don't know, get out there, get outside.
Yes, get out, just get moving. All right, man. Well, let's go. Just down the line for us, but anyway. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being my 100th guest, dude.
I love that. That's an honor. Congratulations for making it that far. I know how much work it is to produce these things and be consistent. And you've really done 100 weeks in a row. This will be 100 weeks in a row, too?
100 weeks in a row, yeah.
That's amazing.
Do you find with your podcast, though, I mean, it is a lot of work. Are you having trouble staying motivated and staying inspired with it?
No, I'm just having trouble time managing. It was really, I started this when the quarantine hit, and I'd already filmed all this content, and we just had time. So now, especially since Kyle works full time as a physical therapist, and now that things are sort of loosening up, and I can go street skating, and life is a little bit more complicated. It's just it's tricky in what we're trying to accomplish to make sure we're way ahead of schedule. And now I'm getting a little bit more like last minute, like, all right, who are we going to interview so we can put it out like in 2 days? But we're making it work.
You must have so many people you can tap into though, like in the skate industry.
Yeah.
Have you got any?
But skaters can be known flakes.
Well, they say they're going to turn up and then they don't.
We've had a couple of those where it's like, all right, dude, you're not here. Where'd you go? But it's fine. They will not be named.
Oh, actually, I've got to. Thanks for not naming him. Although I'd love to know who it is. I've got to ask this. Like, what was it like being on the 9 Club a couple of times? Like, because you're on the Stop and Chat as well. How was that?
So I've done it. I love those guys. I mean, I used to live with Kelly Hart. So Kelly it's easy to talk to. Chris, I just love as a host. He just cracks me up, and he's really in person. It's really impressive how on point he is and quick witted, and it's really cool. But 2 very different experiences, because one, being there in the room is like a long, I feel like my first one, I was probably there for like 4 hours, and the work they do to edit it, to make it like clean, concise, like 1 hour and 30 minutes or whatever ended up being, is incredible. Like, I don't know how they do that. And then the Stop and Chat was weird, because it was like 3 talking heads, but online. Like, I mean, it was awesome, but it was bizarre, but still felt very easy and natural.
Do you think
those dudes.
Do you think they inspired you to start a podcast, or was that just separate?
Yeah, I mean, they're the masters at it, and they are. I mean, they have a very different thing going on. Like I like what they do in capturing a skateboarder's like life narrative arc in a really thorough way. That's not my goal, because I think there's a lot of people that are doing that kind of podcast work, but I mean, it's cool. I'd say it was definitely inspiring, because I just found myself enjoying listening to them, and I'm like, that's sick.
Yeah. No, it's probably my favorite podcast as a skateboarder, but also not even as a skateboarder, just like now I watch them and I'm like, they're so professional, and they run such a tight ship. Really good. Do you think that's because of Roger Bagley has a lot to do with that in terms of the production side of things, right? Yeah,
definitely. I think Roger and Chris are just like so committed to it, and they have a good background of experience, and just took this on as like we're going to fucking do this right. And I'm just continuously impressed with how well they're doing it. It's sick.
Same, dude. Yeah. All right, man. On that note, man, we'll leave it there. So,
dude, have a great day at school, and thank you for having me. That's awesome. It's an honor.
Dude, thank you.